a very flexible mechanism, try to combine and organize the central government and local government to work together. So especially we have very good relations between the higher civil servant and the politicians. So politicians will try to listen to these experts in government. So follow their advices and to take necessary actions. And finally, I think we are now still have the problem to prevent the outbreak in this week. But the major issue we will face is the vaccine. So far in Taiwan, we have very few vaccine. Only we have AZ. And especially when I heard in Japan, the government tried to, well, not use the AZ vaccine. So I do believe there will be an influence on Taiwan people because normally we trust Japan. So that's a major issue. Now, our government is trying to find Moderna and some other vaccines, but it's hard in this situation. So some experts worry about that because only prevention is not enough. Now the EU is trying to reopen if people are vaccinated. But if we don't have the vaccine, we cannot go abroad. So that will be the problem about timing of reopen for Taiwan. So we still have lots of work to do. And I appreciate your invitation for giving me this opportunity to share these experiences in Taiwan. And thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Irvin. We know that Taiwan has been doing very well at the first stage of outbreak, but then you're having some trouble in these recent days. But I guess in general, Asian countries, especially Southeast Asian countries, we have a very same typology of kind of tendency that on the first outbreak last year, we generally did quite well. But on recent months, we are not very doing well. And also in terms of vaccine, it seems that Asian countries share the same problem of not big distribution like in European countries or in US. Considering the whole tendency in US last year, it seems like a tragedy, but they are reopening and they're wearing no more masks. And so it seems I think it's a good opportunity to discuss on this. Thank you very much also for your timing. So far, we haven't received a question to Dr. Irvin. We have received a question for Dr. Park, who is going to respond after the discussion of Dr. Shimada. So we will welcome the last speakers. And there was, for those who entered later, in this session, we changed slightly the order of the presentation. We would like to welcome now Dr. Shin Hyun-ki, and the paper was co-authored with Dr. Kim Shun-chan, Understanding Variation in OECD Countries' Response, Capacity of State and Society for Fighting COVID-19. So their paper talks about OECD country comparison. So welcome again, and you have the floor. Dr. Shin, you're muted. Please open your microphone.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Thank you for your introducing. I feel delighted and honored to have the opportunity to discuss COVID-19 issue with many scholars across borders. The title of this presentation is Understanding Variation in OECD Countries' Response. This research was conducted by I and co-author Sung-chan Kim, who is sitting next to me. He and I are faculty at the same university, Catholic University of Korea, located near Seoul. Today, I'm giving a presentation. Over the past 1 year, many people have suffered from the pandemic, but some says that pandemic created a situation of a natural experiment where each country's response could be compared in terms of how well each country responded to the pandemic. The condition each government has faced was similar, but depending on each government response, the result is different. This situation is similar to the experiment situation. Especially, the world the pandemic made is very different from common knowledge. Common knowledge is that democratic systems are superior to authoritarian systems in terms of preventing pandemic because of a free flow of the information and accountability to the citizen. But in reality, the United States and the European countries showed a rather poor performance in preventing COVID-19. But Australian systems such as China and Singapore show better performance. Concerning this phenomenon, various arguments show up. For example, the failure of the democratic regime results from respect for citizenship. And the success of a democratic system, the success of Australian regime is due to collectivist culture. But we will, Sung-Chan Kim and I will argue that what made the difference between this country is not regime type, but state capacity, and not obedience to authority or collectivist culture, but democratic citizen or civic culture embedded in society. So the aim of this study is to analyze the effect of state capacity and civic culture on the pandemic-related performance of each country. Yeah. First, look at the figure on the left. This is the trend of the confirmed case in 5 countries during almost 1 year. The figure on the right is the trend of death. The pattern of each figure is almost the same. Before vaccination began this year, the US and European country has more difficulty in preventing COVID-19 than East Asian countries such as Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Yeah. Let's move on to the literature review. First, state capacity. According to previous study, state capacity refers to government ability to realize its goal. State capacity includes administrative capacity, extractive capacity, and coercive capacity. Among them, the most important capacity in pandemic preventing is administrative capacity. Administrative capacity can be divided into 2 dimensions: central local dimension and state society dimension. The state local dimension consists of information capacity, decision-making and implementation capacity, and the state society dimension includes coercive capacity, mobilize and cooperation capacity. Please look at this table. According to the Mao, the democratic system is superior in terms of information capacity due to the free flow of information and the existence of the free press. But democratic system is weak in coercive capacity because democratic system cannot force citizens to follow the government guidelines or government measure. In in contrast, Australian system has a strength in enable efficient decision making and implementation, and has a strength in obtain citizens' compliance and cooperation by using strong coercive power. For this reason, China was able to succeed in the pandemic prevention despite the failure of the initial response. Another key factor in pandemic-related performance is how government will make citizens comply with the preventive measure. To do this, Australian system use coercive measure, but democratic system cannot use coercive measure, so it needs voluntary cooperation of citizens. For example, social distancing is the most effective measure for preventing the spread of the COVID-19. The problem is that social distancing also places significant mental and psychological stress on individuals. So individual has to choose where or not to bear the discomfort and practice social distancing for other safety or public good. Individual choice is affected by civic culture embedded in the society. This thought is related to the social capital theory of Putnam. Previous study measured people's movement after COVID-19 outbreak in Italy using personal data from telecommunication company. The result is that the movement in the northern Italy, which has a strong civic culture, was much lower than in the southern part. The same result was found in Germany. In case of the US, voluntary social distancing was more prominent in counties where civic culture was more developed. This finding of previous study implied that compliance with the government measure often found in Eastern Asian countries is not from collectivist culture, but civic culture full of civic-minded citizens. Next, we'll explain the data and methodology. We collected panel data, which includes the monthly number of the confirmed cases and deaths from January to December 2020 in OECD country. So, dependent variable is the monthly number of confirmed cases and deaths. And both data are transformed to the natural log form. Independent variable is two kinds, state capacity and civic culture. State capacity was divided into two dimensions, strength and scope. Strength of state capacity was measured by government effective index from the quality of government data set made in the Sweden University. And the scope of state capacity was measured by the coverage of health insurance. And for civic culture, the degree of citizen participation was measured. In addition, control variable include strength index, which from Oxford University, real GDP, ratio of over 65 aged population, and the population density, Gini index, the degree of democratization, and the presidential system, which measured by dummy variable. If a country is a presidential system, code 1, otherwise code 0. You can find the detail of the variable in right table. Okay. It's time to check the analysis results. First, this is the regression result for confirmed case as dependent variable. Here are three kinds of model, and each model has two kinds of regression. One is OLS result, The other is a two-stage list scale result, regression result using instrumental variable. The reason why we conducted a two-stage list scale regression is to overcome endogenous problem, which results from the omitted variable bias. Yeah. Model 1 shows the effect of a state capacity measured by government effectiveness index on confirmed case. As you see, government effect is positively related to the number of confirmed cases, and it is significant at the level of 10%. Model 2 showed the effect of a state capacity, especially the scope of state capacity, which is measured by the healthcare insurance coverage of each country. But it is negatively related to the number of confirmed cases, but it's not significant. Last model, model 3, showed the effect of civic culture, which is measured by the degree of the citizen participation on the confirmed case. Model 3 showed that high level of citizen participation can lead to this decreasing number of confirmed case. Let's move on to the next result. This time, dependent variable is the number of the deaths. The result is similar to the previous result. The number of the confirmed case. The stronger state capacity measured by government effectiveness index, the less the deaths. The number of deaths decreased, and the stronger civic culture measured by citizen participation, the number of deaths decreased. This result is similar to the previous result. Yeah. I'll let out our finding. According to the analysis result, this study main finding is as follows. First, the number of confirmed cases and deaths decreased significantly in countries with a higher state capacity, even when controlling the degree of the democratization. Second, the coverage of health insurance, which is related to the scope of the state capacity, did not have any significant impact. Third, the last two, the number of confirmed cases and deaths decreased significantly in countries with a strong civic culture. This finding implies that, we guess, pandemic-related performance of OECD countries depend on state capacity and the civic culture. It means that the combination of the two kinds of variables will affect the pandemic-related performance. But this study has many limitations, I know. So further study needed in the future. We should find other factors affecting pandemic-related performance besides what this study found, state capacity and civic culture. And we should articulate measurement method for state capacity and the civic culture. And we should, finally, I'll finish with what I said at the beginning. COVID-19 pandemic is a disaster, but it gives us an opportunity for comparative study between countries from various viewpoints. Yeah. Thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shin and Dr. Kim, for this presentation as well as a paper. We are quite ahead of time, so thank you very much for all presenters also to keep the timing. For the participants, I would like to invite you to write your questions in the Q&A session so that we can answer to you later. Meanwhile, attending questions from the floor, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Shimada. our discussant to discuss the 3 papers put together. Dr. Shin, can you drop your presentation slides from the sharing? Thank you very much. Okay, so
Okay,
Professor Shimada, you have the floor. Yes.
thank you, Dr. Kudo. Can I share now? Is it shared now?
Yes, we can see. Yeah, you can see.
All right. Okay. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for Dr. Park, Dr. Huang, and Dr. Shim and Dr. Kim for their valuable presentation. And it's my great privilege to be with you all, although not in person, but on screen. So first, I'd like to make comments on all the presenters together, and then I'd like to make comments and questions to each presenter. Right. So, so COVID-19 has enabled comparative performance evaluation of governments facing the same challenge as Dr. Shin mentioned. So in a sense, all the 3 presentations give concrete suggestions to other countries, not only to academia, but also to practice as well as the mass media. And also COVID-19 has been shedding new light on classic questions in public administration, which have been long neglected in pursuit of trendy quasi market or political responsiveness. So that is to say that to fight against the pandemic, it is not enough to control the slack or drift of civil service. And from the 3 presentations, I could realize that at least there are 3 very important points of attention. The first point is that peculiar role of state. That is to say that the state can place coercive measures and restrict human rights. So if you use the classic phrase of Max Weber, the monopoly of legitimate physical violence, which has been rather neglected in the study of public administration. And second is that conflict of values or trade-offs. So it has been very clear that there is conflict between protecting safety and health versus privacy, freedom of activities, economic growth, and so on. And also to take some measures, there's always a conflict between fairness versus swiftness. And to solve this kind of conflict or trade-offs, there's clear limitation of the majority rule. And that is to say that the politics has to have the ethics of responsibility for consequences. And third point is that feasibility or capacity under democracy. That is that it is not enough to show that what is the aspirations of the majority. There's a need for concrete resources organizations, and also there's need for role sharing between experts and politics, and also the role sharing between central government and local government. So now I'll move to the comment and question to each presenter. The first I'd ask you, Dr. Park. The presentation shows the link between the length of parliamentary debates and the number of ministers in Korea, and explaining the different reaction to mayors in 2015 and to COVID-19. And actually, it corresponds with general knowledge that organizations tend to be altered facing critical events in order to make political appeal to the public. And in reality, however, appropriate solutions depend on where malfunction comes from. So it is true that reorganization is a sort of showy and easy compared with the total increase in budget, the personal expertise, so on. So it is quite easily taken as a political appeal that show their achievement. But sometimes unnecessary or even having negative effects if you consider that there's the limitation of total resources. It's just a matter of allocation of resources. So I have two questions. And the first question is that with regard to upgrading to Korea Disease Control and Pandemic Agency, was there a common understanding or evidence that the structure under the Ministry of Health and Welfare had hindered proper enforcement policies? So was there any, sort of scientific argument in the Parliament or other places? And after the agency is made, is that the new agency evaluated as operating better than the former Korean Centers for Disease Control and Prevention? That is my first question. My second question is that what implications does the finding of the survey have for other countries? I think that, that from your presentation, I have learned that in Korea, it is basically the power of the president, but still the president has to get the approval of the parliament for allocation of human resources and so on. So are the difference between the countries where the legislature controls the structuring of administration, like in the States and Japan? And in that countries, it is, the parliament has to decide about the organizations. And to the countries where legislatures is not involved, like in the States, I'm sorry, like in the United Kingdom or France. Okay, thank you. That is the one. And second, I'd like to make comment and questions to Dr. Huang. And thank you very much for updating the situation. And I have read the newspaper, and the situation is rapidly changing in Taiwan. And thank you for adding the latest figure. And the presentation shows main factors to explain the success in prevention in Taiwan. For example, IT skills, a high level of personnel and collaboration networks, and so on. And it makes a striking contrast, sadly, to the problem with COCOA, the tracking contract, and also the mask delivery in Japan. And also the presentation indicates the lessons from SARS in 2003. If I remember correctly, 37 deaths, well reflected, setting the National Health Command Center and joint framework and legal foundation, so etc. So Taiwan was well prepared. So I have two questions. The first is that did the government have enough human resources in ICT before the outbreak of SARS? Or so I mean that whether without the SARS, probably the situation was the same or not. And what kind of personnel policies have helped recruiting and developing personnel in ICT? And actually, I'm a personnel specialist, so I'm very interested in that point because personnel in ICT is in any country very expensive to obtain and also maintain. So, what are the sort of secrets to keep that personnel? And second, unlike many countries, people in Taiwan are reported to trust the government and show little anxiety about invasion of privacy in the fight against the pandemic. The measures taken are, in a sense, highly, the infringement on privacy and so on. Sometimes the similar the mechanism was used to make tracking of suspects and so on. So what are the most crucial factors in maintaining this high level of trust? And also, as you explained, now the number is rapidly increasing. Even under the situation, that kind of trust is still kept. So thank you. Okay, so the last one is that to Dr. Shun and Dr. Kim. So the presentation is comparative analysis of confirmed cases and number of deaths in OECD 37 countries from two factors. One is state capacity and civic culture. I think it is very comprehensive and also very informative. And I think that many researchers must be interested in that result. And I'm particularly impressed that we try to overthrow the culturalist explanation of state performance in East Asia based on collectivism from the standpoint of West And also, that your presentation corresponds with Dr. Huang's indications on Taiwan, IT skills, and then the cooperation and so on. And I have 2 questions. In the full paper, the page 17, it is concluded that the preventive performance of each country is more affected by state capacity than regime type. But actually, all the countries surveyed here belong to democracy regime. So Turkey is a little bit, suspicious, but the rest of the countries, 36 countries, definitely belong to democracy regime. So will this conclusion still be sustained if countries under the authoritarian regime are included? So I mean that if the the democracy level is more or less maintained, this survey might not be applied. But if there is very strong factors against that, there might be changed. So that is my question. And second is that all types of state capacity in the full paper 7 and the cited the Mao 2021 are fully measured in the survey. And particularly interested in that central local government relations, which is mentioned in that state capacity types in Mao. And it is fully covered by governmental effectiveness or by different something else than variables. Because in Dr. Huang's indication, it is quite important that the role is played by central and local government relations. And actually, we are feeling the same in Japan. So how is it included? And the third point is that are the result of the survey applicable to other pandemic-related responses? So as everybody is mentioning, now the phase is with changing. This survey is about the prevention stage, but now it is coming to the stage of the vaccination. So is this the result will be still applicable to such as vaccination? Yeah, thank you very much for attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shimada. And all of you made very good job in keeping time. So we are quite ahead of time, actually. So first of all, before asking all the panelists to respond to Dr. Shimada, I would also like to add one question, which was raised for Dr. Park from Professor Shinohara Shugo from Keio University. It is about, it seems difficult to explain the causation with the current model. Do you have any plan to add the content of parliamentary debate as a variable? For instance, you might conduct content analysis to create a variable. So I hope that Dr. Park can also include this question while answering. I see so far no other questions, so I invite the participants to write the question in the Q&A session. And since we are doing this session online, I would like to go further without any official break. Usually we have a coffee break or a toilet break, but the participants can feel free to take coffee or go to the toilet if you need it. So I think we can get continue to the discussion. I see there's another question coming in. Yes, okay, there's one question from Professor Masao Kikuchi from Umeji University. For Professor Nara Park, it is interesting to see the numbers of ministry is how contingent to the political will by the president. There is a remarkable difference from Japanese situation. As you mentioned, number of ministries is strategically controlled. Just for clarification purpose, LAC T1 means 1 year or 1 term. Also assuming there is a possibility of divided government between president and majority party in the parliament in Korea. Same as in the United States. Japan, while employs parliamentary cabinet system, so there is no possibility of divided government situation. just to make sure. And there would be a different mechanism of the volume of parliamentary debate in the situation of divided government and not. Yes, okay. So I think so far we have these questions. And first of all, I would like to give the three panelists to respond to Dr. Shimada, as well as for a couple of these questions. Shall I start by Dr. Pak? Are you ready? Yes, thank you very much.
I'm not perfectly sure I'm ready, but I think I will start answering. I will do my best. So first of all, thank you all for the questions, especially Dr. Shimada. I'll start with the questions from Dr. Shimada and then move on to the question from Shinohara Sensei. And lastly, the question from Kikuchi Sensei. As for the first question from Dr. Shimada, as you mentioned in your question, there has been a widespread agreement from the public that we need a stronger authority for controlling and managing for this COVID-19 situation in Korea. So this newly established agency with the complex title has a head. Her name is Jung Eun-kyung, and she has been so popular, and she has been evaluated as a very effective leader in charge of this COVID-19 situation. And part of the reason that the government party has received a sweeping victory in the 2020 general election was that Korean people in general wanted to support the Korean government and this newly established agency to effectively manage the COVID-19 circumstances. And after the establishment of the agency, I don't know. I don't have any specific information regarding the public sentiment for this agency, but I personally think with more budget and personnel and authority, I think the newly established agency has been working very well to manage the number of casualties and number of patients at a manageable level. I don't want to term that the casualties and the patients are manageable. But I hope you could understand what I am trying to express. So there has been a little bit of criticism, but it's not that threatening to as much as the negative toward the agency. That's my understanding. And as for the second question from Dr. Shimada, I totally understand. I totally agree with you that I should have more explained about the generalizability or the expansive implications toward the other cases around the world. Especially, I think it's very useful for me to consider the differences in terms of the political system. Like Korea has a centralized presidential system, whereas Japan has a legislative parliamentary system. But I would say, I didn't have a chance to mention this in my presentation today because of the time constraint, but I originally started this research modeling on the previous research from Mertensen and Green-Patterson in 2010 and 2013. They have been presenting awesome research on the bureaucratic changes, and they are trying to measure the parliamentary debates with the same measure as I used in the research. But Denmark, as far as I understand, please correct me if I am wrong, but Denmark also has a parliamentary system like the Japan, and I will have to gather all the data and run all the statistical analysis for that. But I assume that given the results from Martinson and Green Patterson's previous article, this framework, research framework, will work with the other political systems like Japan and perhaps with the United States or France. But we'll have to control for the political system and other relevant variables. And moving on to the questions from Shinohara Sensei from KU University. Like you pointed out, I totally agree with your comments because my research that I presented today is highly quantitatively oriented. So I definitely need qualitative methods to complement the outcomes as you suggested, like content analysis. And as I told you in the conclusion part of the presentation, I also need some qualitatively oriented methods like interviews or like analysis on semantic meanings of the words included within the parliamentary proceedings. So I am also even considering topic modeling on the contents of the parliamentary debates. That would be that will totally be my next step for developing this research. But meanwhile, I had to skip to the statistical results directly because of the time constraints. But in this research, I partially used an element of contents analysis because the measure for the parliamentary debates, especially for the second hypothesis, was that the length of the parliamentary proceedings that include the keyword COVID-19. So I only chose the proceedings that include the word COVID-19 from the whole sample. And then I calculated the length for it, and I included that variable in the statistical analysis. And like I said, when I in answering to Dr. Shimada's question, Mortensen and Green Patterson's article has the same index. That's the JPART article published in 2014. And I modeled on their article. And according to Martinson and Green Patterson, the length of the parliamentary debates is a particularly useful measure of the party political agenda because long parliamentary debates arise only on issues that the national politicians and parties in general attend to. So one single politician or one single party cannot establish long debates. Long debates, in other words, reflect the general perception of importance among political parties. So I used that variable drawing on the previous studies, but I still understand the concerns that was raised by Shinohara Sensei. And the title of my presentation was too ambitious, I think, because I think the title doesn't do the justice. but reason is that first of all, time constraints as always, and the second reason is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, it started from the end of 2019, but and after since then there's only one ministerial level organization has been established during the pandemic. That's the new agency for the disease prevention and control something. I don't even memorize the number and title of the organization. But anyways, only one agency has been established. So it was really like extremely difficult for me to test the effects of parliamentary debates on that only one agency. So that was why I told you that I need to expand the time span of the research to wait for the this current Moon Jae-in administration or the COVID-19 pandemic to be ended. And with the extended time span, hopefully I will present a better analysis for the effects of parliamentary debates on the bureaucratic reorganizations. I think I'm talking too much, but I think I have one more last question from Kikuchi Sensei. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. If you can add, you can pause for a moment and prepare for that question because you received just at the very last moment, while I can ask the second panelist to answer if you feel a little bit relaxed on that. Okay, I will assign you later. So thank you very much for your response. Shall I go to Irving, Dr. Huan, for commenting? Yes, thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you for Professor Shimada's questions and comments. It's true that we have a debate, very long debate for the privacy and the safe. I mean, between these two different values. Some people argue that the commander-in-chief, the Minister of Health, is a tyrant because he always made a decision without open discussion. But since it's a situation with something like the crisis management, so people will keep silent. So that's why they can have a very direct control and announce many things and to do many efforts. So everybody is afraid of the spread of the virus. Especially we have the experiences in SARS. Taiwan tried to find the virus strain from mainland China, but they refused to give us. Without this kind of information, without the strain, we cannot develop the treatment for the patient. Fortunately, we got the help from Japan. At that time, there are hundreds of the doctors and experts came to Taiwan to help us to develop the treatment policy. And finally, we got the virus strain from US CDC. So that's the experience we had. So that's why we try to help to establish the emergency center for this kind of epidemic. So I think it's a background of this event this time. And answering your question about the first one is ICT HR. I don't think we had or have enough ICT personnel in government. Every ministry, we have the Department of Information, but actually they are doing something just like the administration affairs. They are not a designer, they are not the IT, even they have the certification, but actually they are doing something, processing the contract or doing some, all to some extent, all the ICT things are contracted out. I mean, we have something outsourcing. So these people, maybe they are technicians or experts in ICT, but actually they are not doing the expertise things. They are just doing the administrative affairs. So that's a problem. But this time we have a minister. I don't know her Japanese name, maybe Momoko. In Mandarin is Tang Feng, and she's good. because she can lead lots of the young generation to involve in the design and develop of the app and to apply the social media. And she is also very popular among the young generation. And I heard that our government is trying to restructure our government organization and to include a new ministry of the information and technology. So probably we will establish a new one after the COVID-19. So Tang Feng will be the minister. And I do believe they have lots of contribution in this event for preventing the outbreak, a pandemic in Taiwan. So ICT people, I do believe they are working hard, and it's also a good example for the public-private partnership. We don't need the government to do ICT itself. We can rely on the help from the private sector. So especially our private sector is much more flexible to do that. So I do believe it's good. And the second question is about the trust. And there are two kinds of people are respected and trusted in Taiwan. One is the elementary school teachers, and the second one is the doctors. So all the name are we speak in Taiwanese, call them sensei, the same Japanese name. So they are respected. So a child, when they are very little and very young, they accepted all the information from the teacher. So they trust it. The same, the doctor can help you and cure you and save your life. So people are trusting the doctors and also the nurses. So that's the major reason, I believe, because it is a epidemic of some kind of disease and very serious. So this time, the commander-in-chief, the minister of the health, Dr. Chen, he's a dentist. He's not a public health expert, but he can listen to the experts in government and coordinate between the government organizations. Even they call him a tyrant, but actually he's kind of people that can communicate, can coordinate. So he has experiences in establishing the national health system many years ago. So that's why he have a very good skill in coordination. And we had a press conference every day. Keep the situation very transparent. So that's also another reason that people can trust the government. But of course, we have complained. But nobody will talk it publicly, because you need to trust the government. Otherwise, if the situation getting serious, who can be responsible? So I don't think we will keep silent after the COVID-19. If we can go through this time and after the pandemic, I think we will have lots of comments and reviews, but not now. So I think that's the situation in Taiwan. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Huang, thank you very much. Yes, that's very true. Meanwhile, we received another question to all the panelists from Professor Sasaki Kazuyuki from Tokiwa University. I would like to make a more general question to all presenters. In the stage of vaccine rollout, what kind of different strategies will be taken by respective government to proceed the task effectively or shift the blame to them? That's an interesting one. So maybe after we can have a second round to respond. We have another comment. I guess it's a good question by Professor Fukaya Takeshi. All presenters, okay. I'm also interested in the government ICT professionals to tackle the problem of this crisis in other countries, since we are not prepared to in advance. As Professor Shimada discussed, how do you keep the recruiting system for this kind of technical stuff sufficiently to tackle the problem from outside market tentatively or from internal government pooling system and so forth and so. I think Dr. Huan has already partially answered that you're basically outsourcing, but you're lucky to have a very good minister in charge. And she's also very popular as well. I met her, by the way, 2 years ago in a conference, and she was also a very friendly person, and I was really impressed. Okay, so maybe we can go further with this question later. We have for this new 2 questions, while I would like to ask Dr. Shin or Dr. Kim to respond to questions for, yes, okay, so Dr. Kim, please.
Dr. Shimada, thank you for your valuable comments on our paper. So regarding the first question, since the outbreak of the COVID-19, there's long debate which regime type is superior to the other, or between the democratic and authoritarian regime. But we think, Professor Sin and I think it's time to move the discussion to the different phase, like which characteristics is needed in order to overcome the crisis such as COVID-19. So we need to focus on the characteristics of government. So in our paper, we use the governmental effectiveness, and related to this, we chose the civic culture. For example, the citizen participation or the relationship between government and citizens. So regarding the first question, and we want to escape the regime type issues. So for us, the OECD data set is the perfect data set to investigate which characteristic is effective to overcome the national risk. So I think it's enough to answer your first question. And in terms of the second question, you asked us the state capacity variable is the fully measured in this survey. Originally, state capacity variable is consists of 12 questions. Each question has a score ranging from 0 to 10. I think it's the most representative variable for state capacity, but it's not the variable itself is not for our research, so it's kind of secondary data. So I'm not sure it's fully measured, but I think it's okay to use this variable as a state capacity, because the questions are covered all the situations regarding countries. So yeah, it's okay, I think. And finally, regarding the third question, yes, our original research question is to overcome not only just the pandemic-related risks such as COVID-19, but also to respond the general risk ahead of the government or country. So one of our meaningful findings is that the civic culture, for example, the cooperation between government and the citizen is important to ready for the next crisis. Whatever, I don't know what risk will happen in the future, but yeah. So I think this is our policy implication. So if we prepare for the next crisis or next crisis management, I think the cooperation or participation, I think it's related to some kind of governance issues, and but we want to stop the issue. So that's our findings and policy implication. So yes, I think it's applicable to pandemic related responses, but also general related responses as well. So that's I think it's enough to answer your third question. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. We are now running a little bit short of time. So for the second round, I would like to ask Dr. Park if you can answer just for your question, and then I'm going to assign to the others for other questions. Oh, Dr. Kim, can you just mute your microphone? Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Park, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Kudo, for giving me a few minutes to chill out. I think I was too excited to get feedback from renowned scholars from Japan.
So now you have 1 minute.
Okay. I'll be quick. So moving on to the actual responses to the question, the clarification question, 1 year lagged for most independent variables. So the lagged variable for the number of ministries would be the number of ministries in the previous year. And the second response will be about the divided government and unified government. I think that's a wonderful suggestion to include in my future research or in the development of this current research. So with a few minutes that were given to me, I looked at my slides and I was looking for some patterns or the differences between the patterns in divided government and unified government. But currently in Korea, this is a unified government with a supermajority within the parliament. But the number of parliamentary plenary sessions and the length of the plenary sessions are both increasing under the unified government, which would be opposite to my theoretical expectations. Because I think the length of political debates within the parliamentary sessions will be increasing under the divided government because of all the political conflicts and strife among politicians and political parties. But in recent years in Korea with the unified government, the length of the political debates are increasing. So I will definitely look into this pattern in more depth and details. And I really appreciate for the useful feedback from Professor Kikuchi. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Dr. Huan if you'd like to answer one of these two questions, whatever you would like to answer. Please go ahead. You have the floor.
Since last week, we are required to give online teachings at home. So it's quite a different way for the traditional lectures in classroom. And I found all the students, they prefer to keep quiet, mute, and turn the camera off. You see, that's a way of the young generation people they have. And they are familiar with the social media. So I found it's interesting that this time for the COVID-19 prevention, we had lots of the young people who like to get involved in designing the app. So I mentioned we just have just launched a new app with the line, and it was designed by an undergraduate student, and he did not ask for payment. He allowed the government to use that free. So it's some kind of, they just try to show themselves. It's some kind of achievement, of a sense of achievement. So they would like to do that with some, we can say that is also one kind of public service motivation. So I think it's valuable for the young generation to the society. We don't need to, I mean, as old as I am, in our generation, we always call the young people are the strawberry generation. Very easy to be destroyed, but actually, I don't think it's right. So probably we should allow the young people to do more things, to give them more opportunity faster than our generation. So that's it's not common, but just maybe just few words to recognize the young generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Huan. I'm aware also that Taiwan has used this platform called V Taiwan to include all the hacktivism and also the citizen activists in the field of ICT. So we're a little bit now out of time, but if Dr. Shim and Dr. Kim, if you would like to answer to the last two questions raised in the platform about vaccine or about ICT professional, it's up to you. Just a few words, and we would like to go towards a conclusion. So would you like to answer to one of these questions? Yes, Dr. Kim, please.
Yeah, if I answer the first question, actually, Korea doesn't do well about the vaccine policy. So I don't have many comments on this, but related to our research, the vaccine make our research questions turn to the different phase, I think. So if Dr. Fukaya, right? Am I right? See our paper, the first and the second figure. Some Western countries have the much decreased number of the confirmed cases or deaths because of the vaccine. So we have to stop the range. We have to stop our research until with the data set until the December 2020 because of the that situation which make vaccine make the phase different. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure which characteristic is effective or what we have to do. But actually, one thing for sure is that vaccine make everything different. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Anyway, thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of the panelists. I'm afraid we're running out of time, so we have to close. But first of all, thank you very much for participating in this international session, as well as preparing your paper, as well as presentation for this very short time. And I really appreciate that we had the kind of first round of discussion about the same issue. And I hope that this is just a starting point for probably a future comparative study. So far, I think we have, I would just wrap up very briefly in 1 minute. I hope so. Asian countries have several common featuring that we did quite well in terms of prevention and the first outbreak, while in the second and probably now the so-called third and fourth wave, we are not really doing well, and especially in terms of vaccine, which might be our future study to look at why we have been successful and why we have been failing. At the same time, as many of you mentioned about the cultural differences from like Western countries, as well as some similar features, as well as different features. ICT use is quite well developed in Taiwan as well as in South Korea, while in Japan we have a lot of problems. And so I hope that this is just a starting point, and we will continue our discussion. So thank you very much for our international guests, as well as Professor Shimada for very nice and detailed discussion. And thank you all for the participants in joining for this session. And we hope that we can keep continuing our discussion virtually first, but then at some point in real person. So thank you very much. We would like to conclude here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
끝났네.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for your,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking your time.
Yeah,
So
thank
Your
you.
very
Thank you for
comment.
your
Yeah.
questions.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. So we'll have to
see you
really
in person
close.
sometime.
Sometimes we will
Okay.
meet offline. Sometimes we will meet
ありがとうございます。
in somewhere. Yeah.
あり
Okay.
がとうござい
Yeah.
ます。
Yeah.
And
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
工藤先生、ありがとうございました。